Welcome back to the quarantine kitchen. Today, we're going to focus on making bread. Now, making bread, pretty similar to making pizza, but a little bit different. So I've worked on a recipe that I think will be easy enough for anyone that hasn't made bread before to be moderately successful. But before we get started, I want to set some expectations here. One does not become a master bread baker in a week or even a month. It takes a long time to master this. So if you don't get it right on the first try, that's okay. Nobody does. But I can promise you, if you follow the recipe, even if the loaf doesn't look the way you want it to, it's still going to taste good. So keep that in mind. Now, in order to develop flavor in this bread, it takes time. If you watch the pizza videos, you know that as well. It's the only way to develop good flavor. You can't rush it. That's how commercial bread is made these days, and that's why it doesn't taste that good. Or if it does, it's because of other products that shouldn't be in the bread being in there. So, the way we do it so that we can make the bread fairly quickly is we make a pre-ferment. And that's what this is. This is called a poolish. Now, last night, before I went to bed, I mixed up some flour, water, and just a pinch of yeast. I'll put the recipe up. And this has been sitting for about 18 hours now, and it's essentially ripe at this point. Now, I'll show you a picture of when I first mixed it compared to now. And it's very fragrant, and this is gonna add a lot of flavor to our bread. And the reason we do this is so that we don't have to do a 2 or 3 day long straight dough. We can kind of add this so that within 4 hours or so we can cook some bread. So, what I like to do with the poolish, because it's all sticky and it's stuck in this container, is that I'll pour the water that'll go into the final dough into this. And that's going to help me get this unstuck before I put it in our mixing bowl. Now that we have our poolish and our water in the bowl, I'm going to go ahead and add our 20 grams of sea salt. Our 609 grams of flour. And then our 1 1/4 teaspoons of instant dry yeast. Now at this point, we're just going to stir it all up. Now you see here that we don't have any strength developed in the dough yet, and that's good. All right, now that we've incorporated all the ingredients, all we're going to do is cover it and let it be for half an hour. Then we'll be back and we're going to go over stretch and folds to build some strength in the dough. So essentially all we're doing here is we're gonna grab underneath the dough, we're gonna lift up, and then plop it back down. And while this doesn't look like we're doing much, we're actually developing quite a bit of strength in the dough by doing this. So we're not even kneading it right now. All we're doing it is stretching and folding. And then we're going to do that another 2 or 3 times before this is ready to bake. So now we're going to do the same exact thing again. I'm going to wet my hand and I'm going to go in, stretch and fold. You can see already this dough is starting to gain a little bit more strength, starting to look a little bit smoother. So we'll let it sit for another 30 minutes before we stretch it again. While we're in between some stretch and folds, I want to talk about the different ways that we can actually bake the bread in the oven. Now, the preferred method would be this, a Dutch oven. The reason why this is such a great option to cook bread in is because it's enclosed. And when the bread cooks, it will release steam, all that moisture that's in the dough. So if you have something like this with a cover on it, that's going to steam the dough while it cooks into a bread. And that allows it to expand a lot better and also gives it a shinier finish. Now, if you don't have something like this, you can use a sheet pan or obviously a baking stone or baking steel, but this will work as well, but we're gonna have to incorporate another element. Same thing goes with the steel and the stone, and that's gonna be a pan, obviously that doesn't have any plastic on it, that can just get preheated in the oven so that when we launch the bread into the oven, we'll pour some boiling water onto this, which is already warm in the oven, and it will create steam for that first 10, 15, 20 minutes of the bake. And that's gonna help the bread expand more and give it a nicer finish. Now we're gonna be baking at 450 degrees or so. So whether you're using a Dutch oven like this or you're using a sheet pan, it does help to preheat both of these items before the bread goes in. Now this Dutch oven, you're gonna wanna preheat for at least 45 minutes because it has a lot of mass. Whereas a sheet pan like this doesn't take so long, maybe 20 minutes. That's all you need. But it's important that you get them preheated because if you don't, you're not gonna get the desirable results. You don't even need to start thinking about it at this point in between the second and third stretch and fold because we're still a couple hours away from putting this dough into the oven. I have a lightly floured surface here, and I just eyeballed it. So we've got 2 dough balls, and now we're just gonna bring them together. You just fold it into itself. You're just trying to make a tight skin on the top of the ball. Boom. And we'll do that with the other one, and then we'll get them proofing in a bowl or a banneton. So this is what's called a banneton. This is what I use, but not everyone's gonna have one of these. So you can also use just a regular bowl, but you wanna flour it. So I have a bowl here. I'm gonna put a kitchen towel right in it, and then liberally flour it. Lots of flour in here so it doesn't get stuck to the towel. Grab your dough, you put the tight side down. Cover it up. We're gonna let that ferment for about an hour. So the best way to tell whether or not your bread is proofed enough is to poke it. And if it springs back just a little bit, but not fully, you know you have it. So at this point, you want to take it out of your bowl, your banneton, and throw on some parchment paper. And that's what it's going to look like. So the next step is going to be to score it so that we can have it expand in the manner that we want to as it bakes. So the best way to do this, if you don't have any special tools, believe it or not, is just a pair of scissors. So I'm going to take this pair of scissors, put it into the bread, and we've opened it up. So right here I have the preheated cast iron skillet, the Dutch oven. So I'm gonna go ahead and be very careful not to burn myself while I do this, and gently place this in the Dutch oven. So now the cover will go on and it's gonna go directly into the oven at 450 degrees for 25 minutes. After that, we'll take the cover off and it'll bake for another 20 minutes. All right, our Dutch oven bread is now done. So what I'm going to do here is take the one that we had proofing in the bowl, and I'm going to launch it onto a baking sheet in the oven. And I also have that pan underneath that's hot already. So I'm going to pour some water into it, and we'll cook this one up. So I'm not going to use the scissors for this. This is called a lamb, and this is the tool that I tend to use to score breads. It's basically just a razor blade with a handle. Now it's important when you do that, do not drop any of that water onto the glass door in your oven, because you could shatter it. All right, so bread, much like pizza, when it looks like it's done, it's done. And it should sound hollow. So, give you an idea of the crumb, I'm going to cut it open. And there you have it. A rustic loaf.